but being able to understand that about ourselves and to handle it as the adults and as the parents. So the first one, I think I got guides up here. The first one is give. So, yes, there we go. So the first one is give. So we're going to talk about giving, and it's, we all want to give to our children. We all like to give things to our children. We're all expected as parents, right, to provide for them. That is a responsibility that the Lord gives us. But with giving, we want to talk about giving out of love and giving with love, but not too much, but not too little either. So it's a balancing act. I don't think I'll say anything today that'll be like, oh, I never thought about that before, or that's revolutionary or groundbreaking. But it's good to remind ourselves of how our giving is involved when it comes to our kids. And so, I've been convicted this week about probably giving too much sometimes and not saying no enough, right? And we'll talk about that too a little bit here as well. So Luke chapter 11, drop down to verse number 10. And this is Jesus speaking, and obviously he's giving the model prayer right before. Verse number 10 says, "For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. If a son shall ask bread of any of you that is a father, will he give him a stone? Or if he ask a fish, will he for a fish give him a serpent? Or if he shall ask an egg, will he offer him a scorpion?" And obviously the Lord's going into, and we'll read verse 13 too, "If ye then being evil know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your heavenly Father give the Holy Spirit to them that ask him?" And he's making a bigger point than just the giving of gifts to your children, but we're going to focus on the giving of gifts to our children. Obviously, the Lord expects us to give to our children, to take care of their needs and even their wants. And that's kind of what we'll focus on today is giving of needs is expected and required, right? And we're worse than an infidel if we don't take care of our family, which is just an unbeliever. But also, wants, right? Everybody wants things, wants love, wants time, wants items, right? And we as adults also want things. We have needs and wants. And even we can struggle with that balance of what we spend our money on, right? And how our budget works versus our needs versus our wants. And we can get ourselves into trouble if our wants we just take care of our wants. If we want something, we do it, right? And we can get ourselves in trouble as adults. So obviously with children, we're not only are we responsible to take care of their needs and even some of their wants, supply that, but we're also teaching them about the needs and the wants and teaching them about you don't always get what you want, right? Sometimes you have to say no. And sometimes no is a teaching moment, right? But understanding that through those givings and maybe withholdings, we're setting them up for how they view life, how they view their wants when they get to be older, how they view their wants versus their spouse's wants and needs when they get older. So it's not just about the things that we give them or don't give them. It's about teaching them and setting them up for just being the type of person the Lord wants them to be as they grow. Proverbs 26:15 talks about having too much of a good thing, right? You find honey and you eat so much honey that you just, because it's good, but you eat so much of it that you end up vomiting, right? That's an understanding that principle that sometimes if you just give your kids everything they want all the time, you're going to have some spoiled kids. You're going to have some kids that just expect to be handed everything in life and expect that if they desire something, it'll be fulfilled. And when it isn't fulfilled, that's when the fits get thrown or the anger comes or the crying or depending on the age of the child, the behaviors that we don't want. So we want to teach them at a young age that they don't always get what they want. It's not always what they expect doesn't always happen, and that's okay. It's okay to not always get your expectations fulfilled, right? It's okay to manage your expectations when it comes to things specifically, and teaching all those lessons to our children through the way that we as parents give to them. So parents, again, I mentioned already, are duty-bound to provide for their children, doing so also with a tender moment-to-moment mindset. We talked about this a few months ago, that taking advantage of the little moments for parenting, not just the big, when they break a rule, or big instances that become a huge blow-up issue where there's giant discipline that needs to happen or instruction, but in the small moments, right? The moment-to-moment interactions is where you do most of your parenting, really. And so when you provide for them, when you buy them lunch, right? Or you're feeding them lunch, or you're giving them clothes to wear, or you talk to them about how the house is warm, or the water comes out of the faucet when they brush their teeth, right? Those moment-to-moment things that they don't even understand, especially as little children, don't understand that water costs money, right? That turning on the faucet to brush your teeth or to take a shower, there's an expense to that. And so as a parent, you're expected to provide that, right? Provide things that keep them healthy, keep them safe, keep them warm. That's an expectation of you. But teaching that to your children in those moments that they understand why they have water and what the expense. I mean, you don't have to write them a bill and say, here, I'm keeping track of all the water that you use throughout your whole life. So when you graduate high school, I can tell you how much money you cost me. But so that they understand that there's a cost from somebody for everything that they have. So they grow to appreciate it. So they go to appreciate the things that they have. And that can start, when they're in school. They're starting to learn how to read and grow. Those expectations can be given to them in those moments. So as a parent, that takes time. And that takes effort. And sometimes it's just easier to just blow over some of those teaching moments because you're tired, you don't want to, you don't have the time. Whatever the case may be, you just don't feel like it. But that's when we want to take advantage of those moments in the small little issues that you can teach and you can parent. And that's when it should be done, because parenting can wear us down. If you're a parent, be honest, it'll wear you down. And it doesn't really matter the age of the children, right? I mean, there's a different word of exhaustion that fits with newborns and infants, right? And as you go through those moments, that exhaustion has a new meaning to you. But then when you get to toddlers, that's a different kind of exhaustion. Maybe more mental exhaustion, because they never stop talking. Once they learn to talk, it never ends. There are questions, there are things that, if you work with junior church kids, they don't ever stop talking. It's really difficult. And then when they get to be in their teen years, a different level of exhaustion, right? And so parenting can wear you down. Parenting can wear down your patience level. It can wear down the things that you would normally do, you just don't want to anymore, right? That's why with your firstborn child, when they spit the pacifier out and it goes on the floor, you pick it up and you start boiling water on the stove, and you put the pacifier in the boiling water. You make sure it gets cool enough before it goes back to the baby. But then when you get to your third kid, it falls off, you pick it up, you go like this, and you stick it right back in their mouth. As kids, you go along, you're just like, I don't have time for that. They're fine, and you just move on. And that's why the youngest child sometimes isn't as precious, and that's not true, but we don't treat them like a little, china vase. Where the firstborns, man, they're in the middle of the night, you haven't heard them, you go and put a mirror under their nose to make sure they're still breathing. Right? And then by the time the third child comes around, if it's not projectile vomiting, just keep your door shut and don't come out. Leave me alone. Right? And so parenting can wear you down. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or that's how we should behave. It's probably a balance from both ends, just kind of come in the middle for all of the children. But parenting can wear you down, right? And it can whittle away some of your even sensitivity and wanting to care. Not that you don't love, not that you don't want to provide, but just that level of showing love can be worn down, can be taken away. And parental love is sometimes absent in homes. You watch the news, you hear all the horror stories, and even probably run into some people that you understand or know that they're just not parental love in a home, right? Children are looked at as a nuisance and an inconvenience. Our society looks at children that way, and that's why abortion is such a big deal, because it's an inconvenience and a nuisance, and so we just rather get rid of it than have to deal with whatever inconvenience it may bring. And we understand that exists in the world, and we would say, there's a difference between us as Christians and unbelievers in how we have parental love in the home. But even in our own homes, sometimes it can happen, right? It can happen in our own homes, maybe not to the extent that we would expect or see on the news or with some unbelievers' homes, but it can exist, where our frustration level exceeds our compassion for our children. And our selfishness and our inconveniences do become an issue where we have a hard time showing love to our children in the way that we should. And if you've been parents any amount of time, you probably can think of instances where you've been guilty of that. And it probably will happen again. but understanding that that's not how God expects us as parents to take care of our kids and to handle them, and ask forgiveness of him when we do make mistakes and when we do parent without love, but parent out of frustration. And I mentioned this already, but 1 Timothy 5:8 says, "But if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel." And again, the word infidel just means unbeliever. So if we don't provide the needs for our family, it's like saying we just don't believe in God. We don't have faith. We don't believe he is who he says he is. It doesn't matter how we live our life, and we do what we want to do. And God makes a specific point about that as Christians, that we are expected to take care of our family. Husbands, that means, with God's order, the majority of the responsibility falls on your shoulders for your home in general. But as parents, that is our responsibility with our children and taking care of them, taking care of their needs, teaching them. All those things all go together. So parents are to give, and specifically giving, we're supposed to give lovingly to needs. But what about those wants? Right? Needs are non-negotiable. Right? There are things that are needed, and you can't say, you don't need these things. But wants are very negotiable. Right? Those are very negotiable. So one question you can ask yourself is, why am I giving to my child's wants? What's the purpose of me giving to their want? Right? Is it so that you can pacify them? Is it so that you can get peace? So you can get them to shut up? Is that why you give into their wants? Are you giving out of love? What's the purpose? Like, what's the motivation behind it? Saying yes to wants can be a loving act, right? I mean, when your kids have birthdays and you get them something they've been wanting and you see the joy on their face, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong to giving wants to your children. It can be a way for you to show that you love them. But sometimes it can be more loving to say no to wants, right? Again, those teaching moments that we can give them. Hebrews 12:10. If you want to go there, you can. Hebrews 12, chapter 12, verse 10. I have the verse written out here, but you can go there if you want. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 10. The Bible says, "For they verily for a few days chastened us after their own pleasure, but he for our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness." So the word chasten us after their own pleasure just means in the way that they thought was best, right? It's not that they got pleasure out of punishment. It's just saying that we were chastened, right? We were punished or disciplined for what they thought was best for our profit, right? And so sometimes saying no to our children, to their wants, it can be a teaching moment. It is more beneficial and more loving to our children to say no than to say yes all the time, for multiple reasons. Right? A kid that never is told no turns out to be a spoiled brat, right? And expects everything to go their way and for them to be taken care of their whole entire life. And that's, I think, some of the problems with some of our younger 20-somethings, that they just expect, I have a desire or a want, and you better fulfill it. And if you don't fulfill it, that's hate speech, right? There's a lot of things that go into that. So as we teach our children and as they grow, no's can be a teaching tool. Right? No's can be used to avoid those spoiled attitudes. No's can be used to prevent unrealistic expectations for life. Because as an adult, when you grow and you want things, you don't always get what you want. You work at a job, you work with people that don't work like you work different than you work. You have a boss that may not care how you work, and you may be the best employee there and not get the raise that you think you deserve, not get the promotion, not get the recognition. I mean, we've probably all had jobs that were not great jobs, where we didn't work for great bosses, and we should have been taken care of a certain way, we think, based on our performances, and that may be true. It may not just be our opinion, and we didn't get those expectations met. And so a child that grows up never being told no in a situation like that, how do they handle that? Probably not very well. Now you're their parent, and you love them when you tell them no. When they grow up and get to people where they work with or law enforcement or wherever the case may be that tell them no, they don't love them like you love your kids. So when you tell them no and teach them with love, there's a much better way than for them to grow up, be told no by somebody that does not care what their feelings are in the matter, and have to learn the lesson then. Right? And so being told no can be a very good teaching tool. We want to give to their wants wisely. Right? I'm not saying never give in to their wants, never give your children what they want, but do it in a wise manner. Don't just do it willy-nilly, what you feel like today, what your mood is, what your attitude is today. And if I feel like it, then I do it. If I'm in a bad mood, then I don't do it. That's haphazard parenting. If they want something, be wise about it. Think about it. Decide on purpose if you're going to supply that want or not. And if you are or aren't, why? And maybe, again, even as they grow, explain to them why or why not. Giving into their wants, though, or giving to their wants can make your child feel loved and energize them to be respectful, right? We talked about the energizing cycle with the husband and wives. When a wife feels love, that motivates her, energizes her to give respect. And when a husband is given respect, it motivates and energizes him naturally to want to give love. So in the same instance here with our children, giving your child love and treating them in a loving manner can energize them to be respectful and to be a respectful child to their parents and to their authorities. And then when you as a parent are receiving respect and being treated, respectfully from your children, that motivates you to love. It's the same type principle. And so understanding that when we give to their wants, sometimes we can energize them. We can teach them respect when we give into their wants. Or not give in. I say give in, that sounds like you're giving into something. But when you give to their wants, intentionally and wisely on purpose. So I have 3 reasons that it's a good idea to give to your children's wants. So not a whole lot of things up here today, but one of the reasons it's a good idea to give to wants sometimes, again, wisely and intentionally, is because it shows our love for them and our spirit of generosity, right? We want our children to grow up to be giving, right? We want them to be giving to the church, as God says that we should, but just giving in general to people, and being generous and not being selfish and holding everything to themselves and always looking out for themselves and me. You want them to grow up to look for needs of others. When somebody else, a friend of theirs, or even an acquaintance, when specifically in our church, when someone in the church needs something and they can provide it, that they don't really think about it. They just do because they can, and they want, and they look for opportunities to do that. So it doesn't have to be expensive or even tangible. As they grow, giving to them, it doesn't have to be an item, an expensive item, or a thing, or with some of my kids' food, right? It doesn't always have to be things of that nature. It could be time. Right? It can be time. It can be experiences, activities. And again, sometimes as a parent, it's easier to buy them a thing than to plan an activity or to spend time with them instead. And so sometimes we as parents default to the quick, easy $5 takes care of this situation or makes them feel loved, but it's, you're just really trying to move things out of the way to get yourself some quiet and peace or time for yourself. So to give them time or plan activities is a good way to give into their wants as well. And they may not even know, like, I want to go bowling today. Sometimes they say that, but if you just plan as a parent, hey, we're bowling today. We're gonna do an activity. We're going sledding, right? Well, it's going to be warm this week, 30s. We could go sledding this week without freezing your face off in 30 seconds. So take them sledding. Spend time as a parent giving. Every kid, this younger kid, as they get older, they realize the walking up and down the hill is the hard part. But when they're little, they don't care. They have so much energy, right? They don't know they want to go sledding per se. They're not demanding, take me sledding or I'm going to throw a fit. But you giving into that, every child wants to go sledding, is giving them time, is giving their wants, is showing them love. And it does you good too to spend time with them and to parent them and to teach them that it's not always about the big expensive things, right? I didn't buy you a new toy, or we didn't go, spend money in doing something else on eating necessarily. We just did an activity. It maybe cost no money, right? Other than the sled and then the coffee or whatever you need to warm yourself up later. But in a time, an activity that you can do that shows them how to give to people, right? It's a different way. It's a way of showing love, a spirit of generosity. And sometimes you give and you just say, I'm just giving this to you because I love you. And take moments like that with your children and find something they want that they maybe aren't even expecting and get that for them and then explain to them, I got this for you because I love you. Like, you don't just, we like to love on our kids that way. We like to see the surprise and excitement when they get something they want. But use your words and explain and make it a teaching moment. Again, a moment-to-moment issue. When you find something they want, no matter how big or small it is, and you present that to them, tell them the reason you got that to them is because you love them. They know that, like that's understood, right? But use the words and say it, especially dads. Dads, sometimes we have a hard time, especially as the kids get older, saying I love you to our children. I know for Lisa, her mom and dad, they were very open, and they said that all the time. My family, not necessarily. My dad, the old Dutch man, right, doesn't express emotion and keeps it all to himself. He didn't say I love you a lot, right, as a father. And so as a dad that knows that, I try to make sure that I don't do that. And I'd say I love you to my kids. So when I say I love you to Carter right now, he's just like, yeah, okay, right? Because he's 17, almost 18, and it's just, he's a man, and it's awkward. But when I was like, all right, good night, buddy, love you. Okay, good night. Just the awkwardness. And it's awkward for me, too, because I feel awkward saying it, because I know that's how he's going to respond. But I try to do it anyway, right? Because I want him to know I love him, and I don't want it to be weirder than it already is as he grows. And so in Madison, too, 14. Right, she has moments where she's cool with it. She has moments where she has awkward with it because, again, she's 14. But saying I love you. With Gemma, it's super easy. Say I love you to her, she's like, oh, I love you too, Daddy. It's just, and then she's just, that's because she's 8, right? But making sure we communicate that verbally. Not just, and it kind of goes back, guys, especially with our wives, too. Well, she knows I love her. I did this. I went to work. I bought her this. I did this. I provided that. So she needs to hear the words, right? Your wife needs to hear you say it. So do your kids, dads especially. Your kids need to hear you say it to them. They know that dad loves them, but say it. So if you get them something, if you're giving, give them that love. Give them those words. Secondly, to motivate children to show respect. And we kind of talked about this a little bit already. And this is not bribing. It's not, I'm going to give this to you. You better respect me, right? Or I'm taking it away. So this is a token of my love for you. Now you respect or else. Right? We're not bribing. That's not giving in that way. And every person, child, adult, you cannot force something in their heart, right? The Lord only can touch their heart. You can pray about that, and you can try to mold that, but you can't force respect from anybody, right? But as a child, as you teach them and as they grow, you can give and take those moments to teach them to respect when they're giving something. When you can even say, when I want you to learn how to respond gratefully with respect when people give to you. And you can take those moments to teach them as you give them something. Say, now, I want to teach you for as you grow, when people give to you, when people are generous to you and give you something that isn't required of them, how we should respond is with respect and gratitude and understanding that this person sacrificed something for me, and be grateful and be respectful to that. And that'll benefit you as a parent, but it also is an opportunity to teach them how to respond to everybody, right? As they grow, when people give, how to respond. Not just be like, hey, thanks. Never say another word, right? But to be grateful and show that you're grateful to people, right? That's a skill that's kind of lost with a lot of people. They're given, and again, it goes back to the expectations. I expect to be given things, and so when I am, that's how it should be. And so there's no gratitude that comes from the recipient. We want to take those moments to teach them that. So give to them in order to motivate them to show respect. A good example can be when we are given something, right? As the parents, as the adults, when somebody fulfills a want of yours, or when the Lord provides for you, it doesn't have to be a person, it could just be the Lord. When the Lord provides for you, when your needs are met, and when the Lord provides wants for you, do you explain that to your children? Do you tell them how the Lord has taken care of you? Right? You remember as a child, you didn't know everything that went on at home. Maybe as you got older, you understood, but as a young kid, you didn't know if mom and dad were struggling financially. Right? You didn't know those things. Your brain didn't comprehend those things in those moments. But as you grow older and as you become parents, you understand sometimes there are financial tough times. And sometimes there are things you'd want to do for your family that you just can't, for whatever the reason may be. So when the Lord does provide things for you, tell your kids that. Right? Be grateful to the Lord for what he has done for you. And again, you can find instances of that every week where that happens if you're honest about it. And then transfer that understanding and that knowledge to your children. Tell them what God has done for you. Show them, based on what God has done for you, why you have what you have, and therefore they have what they have. Give them that information and teach them So that means that you as a parent have to be looking for that yourself. That means you as a parent have to be grateful for what God has done for you and show respect to him when he gives to you your wants and your needs. A third thing is to show our kids their worth to us and their worth to God. Matthew 6:26 says, "Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they?" So as you give to your kids, as you give their needs, give their wants, give them love, giving even with the best intentions can lead to a spoiled attitude, right? And that's where we have to be wise about giving to our children's wants, not just whenever we feel like it or if it satisfies our desires in those moments for peace or whatever the case may be. We have to be wise about our giving to our children, giving to their wants. There's no specific formula per se to know when to say yes and when to say no, right? There's not a concrete thing that says this is when you say yes, this is when you say no. So for us as parents, having the perspective of our ambassadorship rather than our ownership, I think is a good perspective to have when we are trying to make those choices on whether to fulfill a want or say no, right? On a case-by-case basis, understanding you represent the Lord, not just your desires and your wants with a parent towards your children, but that what the Lord wants is what you should be representing. So when those moments come up to say yes or to say no, it's going to require effort on your part as the mom and dad to pray about those things. And it may not be, oh, should I buy my kid this package of M&Ms? Hold on, child. Dear Lord, as I stand in this checkout aisle of Hy-Vee right now, shall I give my child M&Ms or nay? Right? It's not that specific, but it's an attitude for us as parents that we're aware of it and we're constantly thinking about it. I mean, there's a billion things as a parent you have to think about. 1,000,000,001, right? But this should be part of how we parent based on just wanting to do what God wants us to do. So you know your child in that moment, you know where they are, you know where you've been, you know where their attitude is, and whether giving them that M&Ms in the moment is a good thing or saying no is better, is a better opportunity to teach, right? Being an ambassador parent will help you inform those decisions. And then the thing is too, you don't have to defer to what your kids prefer. That's a good quote that the guy wrote. You do not have to defer to what your kids prefer, right? You as the parent are responsible for how the house is run. You're responsible for the decisions that are made. You don't have to default to what kids want just because kids want, right? If kids want to go eat at McDonald's and you don't want to eat at McDonald's, you don't have to go there just because they want to go to McDonald's. They can learn to eat, and this applies to my children too, and probably not too, but they can learn to eat regular people food too, right? They can learn to eat at home is just as good as eating out, right? They can learn those things. Just because they cry and whine and I want chicken nuggets, you don't have to defer to that just because that's what they prefer. Again, that can be a moment of teaching. Now, can you buy them chicken nuggets and that'd be fine? Of course. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that per se, other than maybe the cholesterol that you're adding to their arteries. But I do it too. It's okay. But it's not. Health-wise, it's bad. But, just work out. It'll be fine. The main point is that you're not going to know every single situation. I know exactly how to answer this. But if you're praying about it, if that's your attitude, if you're an ambassador parent and trying to do what God wants you to do in regards to your children, it may help you decide whether to say yes or to say no. And sometimes you'll get it wrong, and that's okay too. And sometimes you'll say no, and your kids will say, "Well, that's not fair." And they'll accuse you, and this might happen as they get older, accuse you of being the worst parent ever. And it's just not fair. I never get anything. No one ever gives me anything. I just never get what I want, right? And sometimes you can be tempted to say yes to avoid that conversation, to avoid that interaction and just not deal with that teaching moment. But don't be lazy, right? Don't be lazy in those moments, especially in those moments. If that's the attitude that child has, he or she needs to hear no. Clearly, in that moment, they need to be taught why no is okay, why no is better for them. Again, you as the parent, right? Back to Hebrews chapter 12, right? Chastening them after their own pleasure, what they thought was best, right? Because that they thinking what is best, understanding doing it for their profit, what's best for the kids, so that they can be more like Jesus. Right? It says to be partakers of his holiness. So as a parent, God sometimes says you have to do what you feel is best as the parent for your child to be more like Jesus. That doesn't mean we did everything which was right in our own eyes, do what we think is best, but that we have the best intentions for our children, and we don't do it out of our convenience, and we don't do it out of their convenience, but we do what we think God wants us to do for them out of his convenience or what he desires. And that takes effort, and that takes time. So even when they say, well, this isn't fair, and they stomp their foot, then you don't say yes to avoid those things. You take the time of teaching and discipline, the D part, when we get there, that comes into these instances too, and the discipline. And sometimes a bratty child needs discipline, right? They need and they need discipline along with it. So much of your child's future happiness lies in learning how to be content. I mean, I would think for us as human beings, learning how to be content is a big connection to our satisfaction with life and happiness in life. So you have a hand in that with your children in all stages of their growing to teach them to be content, right? And learning and watching how we give and how we respond when we're given to informs a lot of what they expect out of life as they grow, right? I've said this many times before in our parenting and as husband and wives, how you set up your home to be, how you and your spouse treat each other, how dinners go, how Christmas goes, how birthdays go, how giving and getting what you want in the home goes, how your needs are taken care of, how all that works out within the walls of your home gives them like 95% of what they expect life to be as they get out of your home. Now, they'll meet other people that had other experiences, and that'll inform how they do things, right? Their spouse and their spouse's experiences will inform and can change how they do things and how they view things. But right now, as you raise them, everything that you do within your home is something they're either going to take and implement into their marriage and into their parenting, which will be good, or depending on how you give it, they're going to have to take and break those habits. They're going to have to take the shortcomings that we have, the failures that we do, and this isn't to scare us into doing it all wrong, but when we do it selfishly and we do things to get peace, not to teach, they're going to have to take some of those instances as they move on to their life, and they're going to have to break those habits. And they're going to have to overcome those things in their life to not do the way you did it. I mean, and not to throw my dad under the bus at all. I mean, we've got a really good relationship now. But I had to overcome the telling my kids I love you is okay and not weird. That's small, right? That's not a huge thing to overcome. But there are some things that can be big to have to overcome based on how spouses treat each other. And the kids see that, how their needs and wants are taken care of and how they grow to be. They inform a lot of how their life will be based on what you do in your home right now. So teach them with giving. Teach them to put their faith in God, right? And not look to things for joy. And to be content with the things that they do have. And that's where giving comes in. You're going to give your kids stuff their whole life. You're going to take care of them, give them their needs. You're going to give into their wants, and you're going to say no to some of their wants. All of that should be teaching tools to show them that God is the one they should put their faith and hope in for things and for life, so they don't focus on the things in life to bring them contentment or happiness, but that he is the one that provides. And that requires us to be the right spiritually minded individuals as parents to instill that to them. And that's a challenge for me as a parent sometimes, to be that way, to think that way, because, I mean, we're God's kids, we're God's children, and sometimes even as parents, we can be pretty childish too. We can be very selfish as parents, and that can pass down right into how our kids expect life to be and understand life to be. And so that's our responsibility. Teach them that it's not all about the things, but it's about him and being grateful to him when the things do come. And then taking those moments when you're not going to give them the things and teach them why, and teach them how to appreciate who God is and what he does provide.